Hey, what is up everyone? Welcome back to a brand new Roblox Studio video. My name is Floppy, and in today's video we will be going over how to create a loading screen in Roblox Studio. In this tutorial we will go over two different ways on how we can create a loading screen. Firstly, we'll go over a system which is basically a fake loading screen. Surprisingly, these are actually used in a number of games. What I mean by a fake loading screen is the loading bar representing the loading amount is not actually true. It's all completely false, and it is purposely set like that. To give you an example, you as the developer are able to set how long the loading screen takes to reach 100%, no matter what device the player is using. The player could be using the best computer in the world or the worst computer in the world, and no matter what, both loading screens will take the same amount of time, which isn't ideal as the lower end device may not be fully loaded in, yet the loading screen has reached 100% already. In this system, we've also added a percentage counter, so as the time runs, the percentage increases. Then we move on to System 2, which is a loading screen which is fully dependent on your device's speed. In a way, a real loading screen. It works just like the other system, but now the loading time will depend on the device the user is playing on. For example, the best computer in the world may take 5 seconds to fully load in, but the iPhone 3 takes 30 seconds to load in. It's all completely up to the device. In System 2, we also include an assets loaded counter, so you're able to see how many assets have loaded for your device so far. These assets determine when your player has fully loaded in and when they have not. Well, without further ado, let's begin. So for starters, we want to make sure our Explorer and properties are enabled. If your Explorer and properties are not enabled yet, head up to the top bar here, click on View, and enable Explorer and properties, and they should show up somewhere over your screen. Once you've done that, you now want to go and create your loading screen GUI. So today we're going to be mainly focusing on GUI creation, nothing associated inside of the game, fully on your actual GUI, which is a player's interface. Anyway, so we want to click on the plus button next to our starter GUI and insert a screen GUI. Now you can rename this to what you like for this tutorial, just so we can easily track it down. I'm going to be calling this loading, because this is now going to be our loading screen. So there is our screen GUI called loading inside of our starter GUI. We then want to click on the plus button and now insert a frame. Now this frame is going to be your main background of your loading screen. So when the player joins in, they don't necessarily want to see, well, we're not wanting them to actually see the base plate yet because assets and things are still loading into the game. So we want to make sure that a screen takes up the entire area of the player's camera. So now to get this main frame exactly your size of the screen, what you want to do, you want to head over here to your size in your properties, and you want to go and remove all these numbers that are here and replace it with a 0. Then you want to head over here just before the comma and put 1 right there, and then we want to do the exact same thing on the other side. 0, and then we want to go and put a 1 just before the comma. So now that will fit the player's screen. Obviously, you will have to go and specifically scale it correctly. I'll leave a link to that scaling video down in the description. So if you are wanting to scale your GUI, which you're going to need to do, you want to go and follow that video right there. So for this tutorial, I'm just going to be setting a very basic, simple background. I'm just going to set it to maybe like a, I think maybe that blue will work quite well. And now the player will load onto this when they join into the game, and then all our bits and bobs will be here. So that our text also stands out, I've gone and made it blue. Anyway, we want to go and rename this right here. You go and customize it to how you would like. I'm going to go and rename this to, let's call this main loading screen. I think that would match it because this is going to be our main loading screen and everything is going to be inside of this frame right here. So now that you've created your main loading screen bar, you want to head over here, click on the plus button next to your frame, insert another frame. Now this is going to be your main background of your bar. So how this system is going to work is there's going to be a background bar, and then there's also going to be the moving bar. The moving bar is the one that is going to show the progress. The background bar is just there acting as an empty space. You'll get what I mean here shortly. So once you've now inserted this extra bar, which is going to be your background bar, you now want to go and add well, you don't necessarily have to, but for this tutorial, just to make it look really good, I'm going to add a UI corner, and I'm going to size it down slightly. Maybe something like that would be good. Maybe, there we go, that should be enough. And then I'm going to change the UI corner radius. Let's go to, let's try 10. Is 10 enough? No, let's try 10,000. I think 10,000 should be good. Yeah, there we go. That gives us a nice little bit of a curve there, representing a loading bar. Perfect. So now we want to head over to our frame. Obviously, you do the shape that you would like to, but if you want, you can follow along with what I'm doing. I'm going to go and change this name to, let's call this background bar. I think that will easily represent it. So background bar, that is going to be our background bar, and then we're going to have another bar on top of this, which is then going to be representing it being like the progress along it. Anyway, so inside of our background bar, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to go to the parent of our new background bar and put it inside of our other background bar right here. So I'm going to go and grab this bar right there, and I'm going to go put it over just like that. Now, just to show you what I actually mean and what is actually happening here, is this is now going to be, oh goodness me, I went to close that. This is now going to be our moving bar. So the script is going to control the size of this moving bar, which we're actually going to go and rename it to. So I'm going to call it moving bar just like that inside of our background bar. So as the player's data gets loaded, this is going to continue to expand, and then once it reaches the end, the game will then eventually load. This is going to be representing how much is loaded. So you can see there maybe 50% or 40% or whatever. Over here it may be 90% completed. And that is basically what these two bars are going to be doing. So for now, I'm just going to go and leave the bar just like that. Obviously, you don't necessarily have to follow exactly what I'm doing. You can go and create your GUI to how you would like it. I'd highly recommend you change your frames to something that you remember and that you can something that you can easily identify, simply because when it comes to adding the code into the system now, you will need to know the names of things and to make it all add up and to actually make it work correctly. Anyway, so we've got our main moving bars right here. We've got our background bar and our moving bar. And just above here is where we're going to be actually having our percentage counter. Now, you can choose where you want your percentage counter. You could have it inside of the background bar here, although the moving bar will cover it. So if you really wanted, you could do something like this and put it kind of like over there. Yeah, I mean, it's up to you. But for this tutorial, I'm going to have our percentage bar just on, let me think, maybe above here. Yeah, I think above there will do right. You guys can go and adjust it how you would like, but I'm going to have our little percentage bar just there. I'm going to go and rename our percentage text here to, let's go and do progress text. Background transparency, I'm going to change to 1, just like that. I'm going to go and change the font to Fredoka, there we go. Text scaled. So I'm going to go and set the text to 0% because at the moment when the player joins into the game, there's going to be 0%, there won't be anything. So I'm going to go and leave that just like that. We can leave the bar because the bar doesn't necessarily really matter. We've got the percentage text. So now that we've got the main components of our background bar, moving bar, and progress text, which displays how much percentage has loaded so far, it's up to you now if you want the following things. So we're also going to be adding a skip button inside of this loading screen. So our skip button is basically going to be a button that skips the loading process. So if someone doesn't want to load in correctly, well, actually system 1 doesn't actually load you in correctly, it just is there for a bit of decoration. It's a fake loading screen. So if you really wanted, you can go and add a skip button, but it's completely up to you. But we're going to be adding a skip button here just to show you on actually how to do it. So I'm going to click on the plus button next to our main loading screen. I'm going to insert a text button. Obviously my buttons are not going to look the best, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and change the text to skip just like that, because that is what the player is going to be clicking to skip. Let's go and change the font. I'm going to go and change the background color. Let me scale the text. Change the background color to a green, and there we go. It should look something like that. Obviously it's not looking the best at the moment, but after a few adjustments then we can actually get a nice looking button there for us. That will do the job for now. So now once you've created your text button which says skip, obviously you design it to how you would like. For now we're going to leave it without a script, simply because we're going to implement the main script, which is going to be controlling the percentage and the loading bar first, and then once that is all working, we'll then come back to our skip button here and make that work correctly. Now also another option that you can have is also to have some kind text. If you don't really know what a kind text is, it's almost like a bit of a hint text in a way, and it is just a text that may have a hint. Search underneath the waterfall for a secret badge or something, I don't know, and it just kind of alternates between text messages. We're going to also be implementing that so that you do have the option to also choose it. So I'm going to go and change this to hint text, because it doesn't really matter what it's called right now because it can be changed in the script. Now that is also going to have its own separate code, which we will get to here after the skip button. So there's a few codes that we're going to go through, but it will all eventually start making sense and start actually adding up and working correctly. So I'm going to go and rename this because we do not want our text to be the same name. So I'm going to go and call this hint text, because this is basically in a way giving a hint. It doesn't really matter what text is shown there. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, that's our hint text. So now that you've inserted those items, we've got our skip, we've got our loading bar, we've got our percentage, and we also got our hint text. I'm now going to click on the plus button next to our main loading screen that is holding everything else and is the first thing that we created, our main loading screen GUI. I'm going to click on the plus button and insert a local script. So now that you've inserted the local script inside of our loading screen GUI, you want to go down to the description of this video, copy and paste the code that is in the description, script 1 it's going to be called, bring it back to Roblox Studio, remove all the previous code, and then paste in the new code. I'm going to quickly go over the main areas here, just so that you can kind of get a little bit of a better understanding of this code. Now, these first areas, these variables, or also known as shortcuts, some people like to call them, is basically where we need to focus the most, simply because all this ties into where your things are actually located. So if you didn't follow my steps and follow where I've gone and put everything else inside of my starter GUI and my main loading screen, then you're going to want to listen closely. So firstly, on line 1, it goes local main screen GUI. Our main screen GUI is the first screen GUI which we created for this tutorial, which is our loading screen GUI. Now your script should be inside, and your Explorer should look something like this right now. It should have your loading screen GUI, your local script, and then your main loading screen frame, which is holding everything else. You want your local script to be a child of your loading screen GUI. That's why we're going up here, local main screen GUI equals script.parent. So it goes from this script to the parent, and that identifies our main screen GUI. So then here on line 2, it goes local mainframe equals main screen GUI dot main loading screen frame. This is obviously my testing frame, what I called it when I was testing. But basically what this is identifying is our main frame, which is holding everything for our loading screen. So local mainframe equals main screen, which is up here, going to our screen GUI, dot going down to our main loading screen. So we want to go and change this to whatever our main loading screen, which is holding everything, is actually called. Local tween service equals game get service tween service. You don't need to adjust anything here. This is used a little later on when we actually go and do a smooth transition once the loading screen has actually gone and finished, and we get teleported or get loaded into the game, so that the player can then go and continue playing the game. But that is used a little later on. You don't really need to worry about that right now. So then here on line 4, it goes local text equals mainframe.text. Now for my testing purposes, when I was actually testing this loading screen, I had my text in a separate frame. Now for this example, or for this tutorial and what I'm showing you currently, my texts are not in a separate frame. They're inside the main loading screen. So what I want to do, I want to go to our main frame right here, and then I want to select what our text actually is. So local text equals mainframe.text. So our main frame, where is our percentage text? Our percentage text is our progress text. So we go mainframe.progress text, just like that, which we will eventually have to change down here, because I did go and change it up a little bit when I was actually doing this tutorial, and I didn't really put the text in a separate frame because it's unnecessary. Anyway, well, that identifies our local text. This is your percentage text, which is going to be representing how far the loading is already on using the percentages. So this is your progress text, which is located right there. Anyway, then it goes to local moving bar equals mainframe.backgroundbar.moving bar. This identifies our moving bar, which is this green bar right here. Now what it does here, it goes to our main frame, which we discussed before, main loading screen, which is right there, to the background bar, and our background bar is right there, and then from the background bar to our moving bar. The reason we do this is simply because our moving bar is inside of our background bar, which is inside of the main loading screen. Then we identify our local main menu. Now, this is not necessary, but I thought I'd put this into the tutorial if you are really wanting it. You can see my my previous bits and bobs part of the code there and where I identified something, but this is up to you on if you want to implement it so that once the game is finished loading, another GUI pops up after. So what I mean by this is, this could reach 100% yada yada yada, but then this frame closes, this main loading screen frame closes, but then another frame opens before the player is actually able to play the game. So if you would like to have a main menu, then you want to keep this local main menu here. If not, simply go and delete it, just like that, and you'll be fine. So I'm going to quickly go and create my next main menu. This is not going to be something crazy. I'm just going to put a screen GUI in here. I'm going to click on the plus button and insert another frame, and there is my main menu. That kind of just represents my main menu, and that is fine just like that. So I'm going to head over back to our script, open it up, and then I'm going to identify on where our local main menu is. So our local main menu is script.parent.parent.woe, and that used to be my old screen GUI name. So we go from our script.parent.parent, script.parent.parent, dot our screen GUI, because we're in the started GUI now, dot screen GUI, and then to our frame, and then we eventually make that visible down there. Anyway, we now move on to the %, or the actual percentage counter, and how the percentage is actually displayed and how it actually counts. Anyway, %= equals 1,100 do. Wait 0.1 seconds. The lower the number, the faster the bar moves. So the lower the number on this wait time, the faster the bar moves. So at the moment, I've got it at 0.1. If I'm fully correct, 0.1 will make it so that every second, the bar goes up 10%. So every 2 seconds, then it will be 20%. And then after 10 seconds, it will then be 100%. If I'm fully correct, we'll have to do a little bit of testing, but I'm sure it is pretty much something like that from what I remember when I was testing this system. Anyway, this is where you're able to adjust it. So if you want the bar to be moving extremely quickly, then you would have it at 0.1, 0.0. If you really want it to move fast, then you can do that. But if you want it to really take its time, like multiple minutes, then you would have something maybe like wait 10 seconds before the next progress or something. It's up to you. This is where you can kind of play around with your digits. This is going to be an area that you're going to want to do multiple series of testing. Anyway, this is basically what controls how fast your bar actually moves. Then it goes text.textLabel.text. Now this is where we need to go and change something. We want to go and remove our text label simply because our text is not inside of a frame. If your text were in a frame, in a separate frame, not in the main loading screen, then you would have something else there. But because our text is identified here, it goes mainFrame.progressText, then we can simply just go text.text. This is now adjusting the property of our text, which we identified up there, which is our progress text, equaling the %. So basically, what is happening here is it's currently getting the current percentage, which is then put it in a percentage format. It will make a little bit more sense a little later on. But anyway, local progress equals % / out of 100. So the percentage is out of 100. So the total percentage that is actually there is 100. So on line 16, this is where it is all happening. This is what is controlling the size of the bar. And this is actually making it match up. So depending on your percentage, your bar is going to be in a similar position. Anyway, you just don't want to touch this, and this is what is going to be controlling your main bar. So now this is what happens once the percentage reaches 100%. So on line 18, it goes if % equals 100, then this now goes on to creating a fade. Now, we haven't implemented the fade yet, but this is up to you if you would like to have the fade in your game. We'll do a test with and without the fade, but it's completely up to you. But anyway, if % equals 100, then local fade in between servers create yada yada yada, and that goes and creates your fade. And now how a fade basically works is a fade is another frame which we're going to be putting inside of our loading here. And this, we're just going to call this fade, just like that. And all it is doing is it is just changing the transparency. So the background color is totally black, and all it is doing in the script is actually just changing the transparency. So it is moving it from, if I'm correct, we will go from a totally black background here when we're actually on the loading screen, but once it reaches 100%, it will then slowly go down 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, and eventually smoothly making it completely transparent. That is how your fade is actually going to be working. So on default, we're going to set this actually to, let's set it to 1. I think that will work quite nice there for now, and then we can always change that later. But that is your fade right there, which we're controlling. So now it's up to you if you want the fade or not. We've got the fade here and we're going to be using it. And now we're identifying our fade over here in line 19. It goes main screen GUI, which goes to our main screen GUI, which is our loading screen GUI, dot fade. And because it's inside of the loading screen GUI, it is going to match up. So main screen GUI dot fade, and that is controlling our fade. Now basically what is happening here is it changes the background transparency to 0, which is basically going to be making it fully visible. The fade is going to be visible, which is going to hide everything else. But then, once the fade in between plays and has been completed, it waits 0.5 seconds. Then the main frame, our main frame, which is our main loading screen, which is holding everything, is then going to become, the visibility is going to be set to false. But now, if you're using a main menu, which we discussed earlier, which we are using a main menu, this one right here, then going to be becoming visible. It's going to go main menu dot visible equals true. So our main menu is now going to be visible, so that the player then can go and do bits and bobs. But if you are not including a main menu, you simply delete that just like that. But because we are including a main menu, just for you guys, we're going to be keeping it just like that there. So now, as I mentioned, if you're not wanting the fade, all you want to do is you want to delete this area right there, you want to delete that one right there, and then you just want to close it up just like that, and then you have got your working script, and it all will work normally without the fade. But for this tutorial, we're going to be having the fade in there. So what we're going to do now is that pretty much wraps up this script right here. And we're going to go and do a test run. So I'm going to go and set the background transparency to 1, simply because we want to be able to see what is happening right now. I'm going to go and enable the main loading screen as of right now. And then what we're going to do, we're going to go and actually go test it. So I'm going to move the bar down there. It doesn't really necessarily matter where the bar is, but we're just going to leave it like that. Now keep in mind, the script and the hint text are not going to work, only the loading bar. So I'm going to go click on play here, and then we're going to load it, and you're going to be able to see it, about every second, it then goes and loads 10%. So you can see it's moving all the way to the end of the bar, and you can see it's actually not on center. That is because we haven't scaled it yet. So you want to make sure that you do go and scale it. And as you guys could see, that blur occurred, and then our main menu arrived without any glitches, or our main menu is now on our screen. Remember, yet our screen is completely empty elsewhere. Oh, goodness, sorry, that made the wrong thing. There we go. You can see our screen is completely empty, but once that bar had reached 100%, the fade happened. It then disabled the visibility of the loading screen, but then it made our main menu visible, which may have the play button or a credits button or whatever else on there for the player to then go and maneuver or explore and whatnot. Anyway, that pretty much wraps up the fake loading screen. Now, there are a lot of bits and bobs that we can still add on to, but that kind of gives you the main idea on how this actually works. Now, with the script button, we're using the exact same thing regarding the blur. So on the script, so we'll work on the skip button for now. We want to click on the plus button next to our text button and insert a local script. So in our skip button, it is pretty much similar to the actual fade section in that previous script that we were just working on. If you are not using fades, we will then be able to adjust it elsewhere in the script. But for now, anyway, we want to insert a local script inside of our script button, remove all the previous code, go down to the description, copy and paste script 2. This is going to be called something like the skip button. You want to go and copy that, bring it back to Roblox Studio, remove all the previous code, and then paste in the new code. So here on line 1, it goes local main screen GUI, and the main screen GUI is exactly what we had here. But now, because the script is located elsewhere, we need to change that accordingly. So now what we need to do, we need to match these up. So we need to identify on what our main screen GUI is. So we go from our local script, script.parent.parent.parent, as also mentioned up here, script.parent.parent.parent. And that takes us to our loading screen GUI, and that identifies our main screen GUI. Same thing as before, our main frame equals main screen GUI dot main loading screen frame, and this is from my testing, so we want to go and change this accordingly. Main loading screen, just like that, and that identifies our main frame. Same thing with the tween servers, just ignore that. Now this basically creates the function, so when a player clicks on the script.parent, which is the text button with the mouse button, or a mouse button, or once it's clicked, it will then go and run all of this. So it will not, none of this will run until our script.parent or our text button has actually gone and clicked, and it creates a function. Anyway, so now what basically is happening here is we've got it on default so that it does actually go and configure the fade with it also. If you're not wanting the fade in your system, then you simply go and delete the fade area, and job done. But I mean, it's completely up to you. For this tutorial, we're going to be keeping it with the fade. So exactly how we had it just before. It goes to the main screen GUI.fade and it controls our fade, and we don't need to adjust anything else there. But basically, I'm going to quickly go through it here. That creates our fade exactly like we discussed before. It waits 0.5. Once that fade has been completed, it then goes to our main frame, which is our main loading screen. It makes that the visibility false, which basically makes it so that the how do I say this? That the actual main loading screen, which is holding our loading bar, is invisible. Now basically what is happening here is we are disabling the script. So keep in mind, this is our skip script. So this is going to be what the player can click to then go and skip the loading process. So mainframe.parent, so our mainframe, which is our main loading screen, dot parent to the loading, then it goes to the local script. Now because I haven't gone and changed it to anything else, you can go and change that right there. Obviously, if you've gone and changed your local script, which is controlling everything else, which was the first script, you then want to go and change that accordingly. But I'm going to go and name it to local script because that is what our script is called. Dot enabled equals false. So now that disables our local script, making it so that the blur or the fade doesn't occur again. So when a player clicks skip, that full-on loading screen goes and never appears again and won't bother you throughout the game, and it just disables that local script so that it doesn't continue running. Anyway, mainframe.parent.parent.woe. This is again for our main menu, so it goes to our mainframe.parent, so our mainframe over here, which is our main loading screen, .parent, which goes to our parent, which is our loading, .parent to our started GUI, and then to our main menu, which is our screen GUI. So I'm going to go and change this to screen GUI, .frame, .visible equals true, and this is opening our main menu. Same thing here with the fade out. This is controlling what the fade actually goes out. And if you've noticed, what basically is actually happening is it changes the background transparency. So here, it fades in and it sets the background transparency to 0 to make it completely, I guess you could say, you can't see anything, and that is the fade. The fade is right there. Then it goes and does everything else, and then once that all that has happened and everything, it then goes and fades back into so that it's invisible, so that the fade cannot be seen. So fade can be seen, fade cannot be seen. So once we've gone and changed everything accordingly, let's go test it out. So I'm going to go click on our play over here. Again, our hint text is not going to be working, but now our skip test will be. So I'm going to go click on skip. You're able to see it then blurs, and now I'm taken straight over to our main menu, which we organized. But now what would usually happen if we didn't implement that disabling of that local script is around about now, another fade would be happening for absolutely no reason, simply because that script is still running. But now that we've gone and disabled it, no fade is going to be occurring. So now that we've got our main loading bar, our percentage counter, and our skip button working, we're now going to implement the last system in our hint text. This is completely optional. You do not necessarily have to add this, but I thought I would add it in today's tutorial simply because, you know, I want to make sure that it caters for everyone and really whatever loading screen that you're actually wanting. So go and remove all the previous code, click on the plus button next to your hint text and insert a local script, remove all the previous code, and then paste in the new script, which is going to be down in the description, called something like script 3 hint text. You'll see it down there. Bring it back to Roblox Studio, paste in the code, and as you can see, it is an extremely small, very basic code. So we identify our text label, which is our script.parent, that is our hint text, local texts. Now basically what is happening here is we are randomizing our text. So this is where you're able to put all the different types of text that you would like to be shown on your hint text. So usually you don't necessarily have just one piece of advice or pieces of text that display you here. You have a wide range. So you can really play around with what your text say. If you're wanting more and multiple text, all you do is simply add a comma here behind your last one, and press enter to go to a new line. You then open up these quotation marks or speech marks, whatever you want to call them. You then go and type in whatever your message is. So you could say, "Hi fishy," just like that. And then you add another quotation mark or speech mark. And there you have it. Now you've got another line or another message that is going to pop up in your hint text there. Now basically what is happening here is we're identifying our local text. Great, you can go and add as many more as you would like, and this is where you're able to adjust what is actually said inside of this hint text bar. Now what happens down here on line 9, it goes while true do, which is a loop, while true do, it goes local random text equals math.random1 hashtag text, which basically is randomizing our text. It goes math.random 1, so it's choosing from option 1, hash text from all of the text, which is then randomizing the text so that it's not going to come out in order. It's not going to go hello Roblox, welcome to the fishy and hi fishy and all of that. It's going to go randomly. Yes, it may come out in that order occasionally, but that's because you've got a very short list. The more you add, the less likely you're happy to you happen to have multiple of the same messages each time. But there again, it's up to you, and you need to customize that to yourself. But this randomizes our text. It then goes to our text label, which we identified up there. It goes to the text, which is in the properties, and then it equals text random index, and that is basically our random text out of these, our random text message out of these that we have mentioned up there. And then it waits 1 second, and then it redoes it, and then it changes this hint text again. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and change the wait time to 2 seconds though, so that we can actually see the rotation and what is actually happening. So that is all you need to do there. You don't need to go and change anything else. Click on the X button up there, click on the X button up there, and now everything on this loading screen should be working. So we go click on play. Our hint text is now going to be loading. You can see the game is progressing. Welcome to the game. That is there. Then it will change after 2 seconds, hi fishy. Then after about 2 seconds, welcome to the game. And you can see it sometimes does actually choose itself again. So for example, what happened there at the beginning was most likely because that was more like 6-8 seconds. Basically what would have happened there is it would have chosen welcome, I think it was, multiple times. Same with the fishy one, it could have chosen it multiple times. But obviously the more text you have, the more unlikely that is to happen. Alright, we are now going to move on to System 2. Now this is going to be the system which is technically the real loading screen, which tells you how many assets are loaded, etc. And it gets all the parts inside of your game, and once they're finished loading, then you will be processed into the game. As we mentioned before, the system that we just did was a fake loading screen, but now this one is going to be a real loading screen. So if you're playing on more of a higher end device, more of a powerful computer, then your loading time will probably be less compared to someone playing on an iPhone 3, for example. If they can even play Roblox on an iPhone 3, I've got no idea. But it depends on the device's speed. Will depend on how long the player actually takes to load into the game. You could have the best computer in the world, take 5 seconds, you've got iPhone 3, it may take 30 seconds. It's completely up to your device's power and the actual speed it takes to process something and to actually load the entire game. Alright, so we're going to go and use the exact same main loading screen GUI that we used before. All we're going to be changing is the local script. There are a couple bits and bobs which we will change along the way, but it's completely up to you on how you change them and if you do change them. Anyway, so I'm going to just leave this, I'm going to duplicate the script right here. I'm then going to disable it because I'm going to eventually come back and put these scripts in the description for you guys. So now that we've duplicated the script and we've disabled one of the scripts that I'm going to be eventually using a little later on, this is now going to be, I'm going to change the name to, let's go and call this local script real, just so that we know which one is which. So that's the fake one. This is the real one, which actually loads it depending on your device's speed. Anyway, for starters, I'm going to change a couple of things on the GUI. So we can leave hint text there because that will also be there. You can have that in either of the systems. Same thing with the skip. The only thing with the skip one, which I'll actually just mention now so that you don't have to worry about it later, is on here on line 14 where we disable the script. Depending on what your script is actually called, you go and change that accordingly here. So if we're using the real one, for example, we're going to have the local script real in here, not the local script. Hopefully that makes sense, but obviously go and change it accordingly. That's all fine for now. I'm going to go and change the progress text here. And now this is going to be saying assets loaded. And this is going to be displaying how many assets have actually loaded in the game so far. The bar is going to be the same. Everything else is going to be the same, just how we have had it here. Now we want to head over to the local script real, which is going to be our real script. So now that we're inside of our duplicated script, this is the other script right here that I've disabled, which I'll eventually use it a little later again. So that's the fake one. This is the real one. This is also the fake code still. So now we want to go and replace this code. So go down to the description of this video, copy and paste the code that's in the description. Script 4, I think we're up to now. It's going to be called something like loading screen real code or something to that extent. Go and remove all the previous code and then paste in the new code. So you can see it's relatively similar in a way. We've just got a couple more variables which kind of tie into how many game assets we have. Anyway, I'm going to go through the code here, and obviously you need to go and change the variables to whatever your where your parts are positioned, exactly what we had to do in the previous script here. So local content provider, you don't need to touch this. Here on line 2 it goes local main screen GUI, exactly how we had it before. Our main screen GUI is our loading screen GUI right up here, so we don't need to adjust that. Our main frame, which is our, for this tutorial, we're using main loading screen, so we want to go and change that accordingly. So we've already got that in the correct place, so we go to the main frame, the main screen frame, dot main screen frame, which is up there, down there, perfect. That identifies our main frame. Tween service, as before, ignore that, you don't have to worry about that. That's just got to do with a blur. And then also identifying our main menu, as we did before also. Our main menu is on our screen GUI inside of the starter GUI. So it goes from the script, .parent, .screen.GUI.frame, and that identifies our main menu, which shows up after the blur has occurred. So here on line 7 it goes repeat wait brackets until game is loaded. So then here on line 9 it goes local game assets equals game get descendants. Then here on line 10 it goes local total game assets equals hashtag game assets, and this is just grabbing all of our game assets inside of our game. That is why it is total game assets, because it goes hashtag game assets, getting all of our game assets which are inside of the game. Then here on line 12 it goes local load bar, which is basically our moving bar that we identified a little earlier on. If you guys recall, this right here is our moving bar, and that is the main thing that actually moves up and down depending on your progress. So we're identifying our load bar, which is main frame, wait for child, so it goes to our main frame, which is our main loading screen, wait for the child of the background bar, then it goes inside of the background bar and goes to the moving bar, wait for child, and it basically waits for those things to arrive before it moves on. Then it goes load bar dot size equals udem.new, and this basically I guess you could say sizes down the bar to the beginning so that it is not, when you join into the game, it's not there, it's like invisible, and that is what it is currently at right there. So in the script right now, that is what is going to make it. It's going to be completely invisible on the player actually joining. On when the player actually joins. So here on line 17, we now want to go and change this accordingly to our assets loading text, which is our progress text, which we mentioned here before. So we want to go to our main frame, main screen GUI.main loading screen, which is over here. And then you're able to see our progress text is inside of our main loading screen. So we go to our main frame, we want to go and change this text over here to progress text, exactly word to word with capital letters. Just like that, progress text. Yep, that all lines up. And then dot text, so we want to go and remove that right there. Dot text equals assets loading, and then, oh sorry, I wrote that wrong. It doesn't necessarily really matter on what that says, because that will be changed automatically accordingly. So anyway, it goes to our main frame, it waits for the child of our progress text, it then goes to the property of our progress text, and then it goes assets loading, and then the 2 dots, and then the 1 out of the total assets. So it finds our total assets, which is mentioned up here, and then it goes 1 out of our total assets. So when it initially happens, it will then say 1 out of our total game assets. So it will say 1 out of maybe 5,000 or whatever, how many assets you've got in your game. And then it waits 0.5 seconds. Now, if you're not wanting the asset counter, which some people may not want, you can delete everything between line 16 and 21, right from line 16 to 21, and delete it, because that whole area is what controls how many assets are loading and like how the assets are loading and the total display of the text assets loading on your main loading screen. So if you don't want it, you can delete it just like that and move on, but obviously you need to then go and delete that right there, because that local function is no longer there. Anyway, we're going to be keeping our loading assets right there, so we'll go and put it back, but that's if you don't want your assets loading text to show up over here, right there above our loading bar. Anyway, then it goes for I asset loaded in I pairs game assets. Do content provider preload async assets to load. So it goes to it basically identifies our assets to load. It then goes update loading text. So this function will then run, and then it goes load bar.size equals udem or udem2.new I/ total game assets, comma 0, comma 1, comma 0, and then a close bracket. And this is basically what is controlling our bar size when our assets are actually loading in. And so, for example, when we have, say, 3 assets loaded in out of 10, then it is going to move accordingly. You'll see what I mean here when we go and test it out here shortly. But this right here controls out the displayment, or how the assets is actually displayed on the text out here. But this is actually how the bar is, I guess you can say, controlled, and how the bar moves from place to place and up and down from there, and how it is sized up. And then here on line 29, exactly how we mentioned before, this controls our tween, and as we mentioned, main screen GUI.fade, going to our fade there, and this does exactly what we had happen on that fake loading screen with the wait time. Same thing happens here. The main frame, which is our main loading screen frame, goes invisible and goes false, but then our main menu becomes visible. Again, if you don't have a main menu and you don't want a main menu, you just delete it like that, and then job done. But there again, there's our fades, there's our fade in, so it goes completely invisible, and then once all that has happened and it waits 0.5 seconds and all of this rubba-jubba has happened, it then fades back out, and making our background transparency of our fade 1, which makes it completely clear, taking us over to the main game, where then we will be greeted with our main menu, which has been set to visible up here. Now, after just looking back at the script, I forgot to name something here. How I forgot to do that, I've got no idea. But basically, this is what is actually going to be displayed. I don't know how did I miss this? Anyway, so we go to our main frame, and now we need to identify our main text, which is actually going to be displaying the assets. So exactly how we have it like here is how we need to have it up here. So main frame, wait for child, which is going to be progress, yes, text, just like that, dot text, so we can remove the text label, because when I was doing testing, that's my mistake. I actually had the text located in a folder, in another frame, which is really not necessary, but I just put it there for the testing purposes. Anyway, we've got the progress text, dot text, and then we can do a string dot format, assets loaded, yada yada yada, and that is controlling how it is all, I guess you could say, updated on the actual assets loaded bar. I don't know how I missed that. Anyway, that is everything that you need to do on the script. Now, something else I wanted to point out, just as I went to go test it, it gave me an error and nothing was working. The reason for this is simply because we're using a loading, I guess you could say a loading screen, not everything has fully loaded into the game yet. So this script ran trying to find our main loading screen, which had actually not I guess you could say, loaded in yet, causing an error here. So what we want to need to do in this example, so when it says main loading screen frame, and this is also something that I should have picked up when I was first writing the code, but it's also good for you guys to know, but when it says main loading screen frame is not a valid member of screen GUI players.its_floppyfish player GUI loading, that basically is saying that our main loading screen is not a valid member. It is not in our loading screen GUI, but actually it is. The reason for that is because I can see it right there, and it simply is. And the only reason it would have caused this issue is simply because it hasn't loaded in yet. So, but just by that not loading in fast enough to run through the code, it has caused an error which has completely made the loading screen not work. So in this instance, what we want to do is either do wait for child or find first child. For this example, I'm going to be doing wait for child, and then I'm going to do main loading screen just like that, and then we can delete that right there. And now we're waiting for our child, so we go to our main menu, equal our main screen GUI up here, wait for child, main loading screen, so we're waiting for it, which is located inside of our main loading screen right there. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense, but if you ever get any errors like that, it is simply because the thing hasn't loaded in correctly. And especially with us working with very, like before loaded in assets in the game, and like working with the first bits and bobs that actually happen in the game, this is bound to happen simply because it takes time for things to load in the game. So now if we have to go check it out, since we've now got and added the wait for child, you'll be able to see we load in, we've got the welcome to the game, and that will change automatically. Assets loading, it increases, and then we've also got the skip bar, as you guys could see, and then we've got the main menu here and had that nice blur. But as you guys could see, it took a quick sudden jump in assets which had loaded. That is because some assets load faster than others. The first assets that we usually see, I'll run it again, but the first assets which we usually see load into the game are the first bits and pieces, for example, like the GUI and bits and bobs like that. but the last assets will probably be like the minor lighting bits and the last like really small bits and bobs which don't take long to load. That's why you may have a sudden quick jump simply because those have loaded so fast. But now let's say you had more of a lower end computer. Because I've got quite a good computer, it loaded really fast. Yet it's a blank base plate, it didn't take long. But let's say you had a lower end device, say an iPhone 3, it would definitely take probably a lot longer to load in, simply because maybe Wi-Fi connection or whatever, or the device speed. But you can see just in a matter of seconds, this GUI is completely loaded in, and by the time I load into the game, I'm on my main menu screen here, which we've implemented. But by the time we're actually able to play the game is ready for us to play. There's bound to be no issues with it. There's going to be no lagging. There's going to be no missing textures or missing trees or half loaded in chunks. You know, it's all going to be fully loaded in so that it's ready for the player to play. So to just show you what happens here quickly, if I go and click on skip, you're able to see it loads in there. I'm going to go click skip. It takes us straight over to the main game. Yes, we've skipped the loading, but it doesn't necessarily affect us too much here. But now, because we're also in the skip button, we've gone and disabled the script. We no longer have that blur or the fade, which will occur usually if you didn't go and disable that script. But we can go straight to the main menu if a player goes and clicks skip. So that is system 2 done, and as you guys could see, we had the hint text changing along, we had the assets loaded displaying up here, we had the bar moving, and we also implemented the skip button. So hopefully you guys are able to create a very cool looking loading screen from that information and from those scripts that I've provided you. I'm pretty sure we've gone over pretty much everything you could have in a loading screen, just so that your players are able to have the best experience possible, and so that they're not joining into a game which has got half loaded trees or half loaded this, half loaded that, and it is all ready for them to play once the loading screen has finished. If you guys are a little bit lost and you're needing a little bit of assistance with your loading screen, or something doesn't seem to be right, feel free to create a ticket in my Discord server and we can happily help you out. But anyway guys, I'm going to wrap up the video here. If you did enjoy, I'd appreciate it if you do consider subscribing to the channel, turning on the notification bell, and also do consider liking the video. I would really appreciate it. But anyway, have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see everyone in the next Roblox Studio video.